Hey guys, thank you so much for joining in. This is our last. This is the first session for you probably if you weren't part of some of the sessions that we've conducted for Unilever or RB. But this is also the last session for us in terms of this one-time workshop that we've created on summer placements prep. My name is Varun Satia, and over the next 60 minutes, 60 to 90 minutes, slightly long for an online piece, but in that period, I hope to give you a few insights on how to crack placements, summer placements in particular, from a marketing perspective. I hope to also get you excited for a career that is extremely rewarding in marketing, and I hope to have fun along the way over these next few minutes in. So thank you so much for joining in. This is a YouTube live session, so it works like any YouTube live session. By all means, put up any questions that you have through the course of this session in comments, and I'll sort of respond to anything else. Or you can wait in as we go forward in as well, and you can ask me questions towards the end as well. Before I sort of give you too much detail here on what we're going to be doing in, I have to tell you that because I've created this specifically from a summer placement prep point of view, because there are students here I mean, we've split up the campuses in parts, but we have essentially students of the top 50 campuses of the country. And therefore, I'm going to focus largely on how to crack the placement in, and any marketing knowledge that I'll give you will also be from that perspective. Now, the good news is that in the real world, we follow the same principles. It's just that they're not applied as simplistically as they would be applied here. Here, we'll take in a lot of assumptions and so on and so forth. But the frameworks I'm going to teach you, those are going to be useful throughout. And in fact, one of the things I've tried to do in this session is to really sort of use the frameworks to some extent that you already know of, right? And I'll give you some tidbits on how to really apply them in a very industry forward way. I think that's where most students get a challenge in. But I'm going to try and keep things very, very simple so that you can clear these placements. And once you do that, hopefully, we'll get a chance to take you in through more nuances, more data-driven ways of marketing that are built on the same ideas, but are even more fun than what we're going to be discussing in today. A quick background. I have a very classical MBA experience. So I went to FMS. In my time, I think over 80% of the audience was an engineering person and so was I. So it was a very sort of a classical MBA experience. From there, I went in. By the way, I was also part of the placement team. So if any of you who don't like your placement teams in your campuses, I was part of that crowd who was, in fact, I led the placement team in my second year. So I've done a fair bit of non-people pleasing behavior there on campus. When I joined my placement company, I joined Nestle. I worked with them in marketing largely. I did a little bit of sales, but largely my time was spent in marketing. And I worked on Kit Kat first, then I worked on Maggie sauces, then I worked on Maggie noodles. Spent about 4.5 years across these three brands, and then I quit, and I started up in 2015. And that was a period. I had a startup in that I'd sort of been part of in college as well, but nothing compared to nothing prepared me for what was going to be happening in next. That startup, by the way, was not Kraftshala. It was something else, and it was a failure of an extraordinary kind. There are some ventures which fail it because they got one thing wrong or another thing wrong. I got like a million things wrong there. But I think one of the things that perhaps was most wrong was the fact that I don't think I should have ever gone in that direction in retrospectively speaking. Of course, it taught me so much, but it was not a space for me to go into at all. So I shut down that venture fairly quickly, 10 months into it, started working on projects that were closer to the heart, started working on marketing problems that were closer to the heart. One of those problems I'm going to be speaking about today as well. And I started training some of the on-campus students in. I think one of the first sessions I took in was in SB Gen. Then I'm Koikot, then I'm Ahmedabad. FMS, obviously, I'd been associated with for a few years before that. And finally, I started Kraftshala. And today, Kraftshala, Ishu and I, who worked, who sort of co-created this company with me, and has been integral part of every program that we've ever created. Together, we've made Kraftshala as one of the fastest growing education platforms. Our quarter-on-quarter growth is about is upwards of 5.5x, making us one of the fastest growing edtech companies in India. Hope to be the largest marketing training platform by March of the coming year, so in about a little less than 6 months from now. And hopefully we'll get a chance to work with some of you as well, because while we do a lot of programs which are now not for business school students. In fact, the online programs that we run in business schools is now the smallest aspect of our business, but it's one which is very close to my heart, because it allows us to work with a small number of students who are very high potential and very driven, and it's an absolute joy to work with them. So we select about 5 students every year. We just open applications once in the year. So if you're a business school student, you'll be able to apply once only. If you don't apply, then you can't enter into a Kraftshala program at all during your B school tenure. It will happen between Jan to March. We'll open up applications, you apply. If we like you, we'll give you an offer. Typically select between 4 to 8 students a campus in. Right, so that's something which is there. But let's turn our attention back. Okay, I did miss one thing. So if you've been part of any case competition, we sort of collab on a whole range of things. So if you're part of the foundation school of Unilever, that's something that we had co-created. If you were part of Lime, that's something that we have been collabing with Unilever for many years now. The case, the training, and so on and so forth. Also work with RB, also work with Nestle, also work with Marico, also work with P&G. Lots and lots of companies that we have collabed on. All right, so this discussion, like I said, it's going to be between 60 to 90 minutes. I do apologize, it's longer than what an online session should be at, but I have a lot of information to give you, and this is all going to be relevant for you. So what I'll do is I'll focus the bulk of my discussion on the first 2 points. Actually, on the first point, which is that if you can solve a marketing case, that's about it, right? And my approach is that you won't be able to just solve one case. You'll be able to solve lots and lots of cases using that simple approach, and I'll keep it very, very simple, right? So simple frameworks applied very, very logically, strategically, such that marketing doesn't, I mean, I don't know what term you guys use on campus today. In FMS, we used to have the term gas. In some of the other campus, it used to be FAF. Whatever it is that you use, right? I mean, that is the exact opposite of what marketing is in the real world, right? It's very strategic, logical, data driven in the most sense. So while we are not going to be applying a lot of data principle, we'll be applying a lot of logic in solving any marketing case. And then I'll give you exposure to how you can use your own digital understanding in order to sort of improve your marketing problem solving. I'll also teach you one technique of how to crack interviews, which has nothing to do with marketing and everything to do with how to crack interviews. And then the last piece is, because I can only give you so much information, I'll give you links to how you can get some of the other information which is relevant for you to crack your summers. Good way to start things is to tell you what not to do. Okay, so the classical way in which summer placement interviews go bad, in fact even final interviews, but more so in summers, is when people think that the way that they solve marketing problems is by using a lot of jargon, right? The easiest way to nix your chances, kill your chances of cracking an interview is by using the word brand equity, unless someone asks you what brand equity is, right? Because that's not how marketing professionals behave. We keep our language simple, which is what shows that we really understand our concepts really well, right? So marketing case problem is very commonsensical, logical, empathetic way of going about it. It is not about using big words, and I would encourage you to not go down that path if you get into trouble. Now, let's get into what kind of questions are actually asked in. So like I said, we started in 2017, but I was doing sessions from 2016 itself, and I started doing this research with students to understand what kind of questions are being asked by companies, and there was a certain pattern that I recognized. I wonder if you'd be able to recognize it as well. So there was a taxi app, I think it was Uber, which said that how would you plan to launch our app in Ranchi? It was either of Uber or Ola. I think it was Uber. Second was an e-com platform in 2018, which had asked, what will you do to increase sales of kids wear on our platform? Then there was an FMCG in 2017, which asked, how would you topple our key competitor from the number one spot? This was a question that was phrased by ITC. This was an ITC interview, and the category was something that I was quite familiar with. And then lots and lots of questions like this. Now, if this is if you notice, I mentioned the year as well, because the year is quite important in figuring out what exactly are the kinds of questions that managers come up with when they're testing you on marketing capability, right? What they do essentially is they pick up a problem that's top of their mind at a given point of time. So let's say on 10th of October 2021, what are the kinds of problems I, as a brand builder, I'm solving in my day-to-day job? I give that question itself to prospective candidates and I see how they think about that challenge. I know that you don't have enough information to solve the problem. I don't really care whether you solve the problem or not. In fact, I would be shocked out of my mind that a business school student, forget first year or second year, a business school student could actually solve the problem that I've been working on a day-to-day basis, right? So I don't expect great answers, but what I expect is an approach, right? So I want to see how does someone really think about that problem in order to figure out if this person has the right aptitude for the job. And then once I obviously recruit them, I get 2 months of the summer internship to see if this person has any capability, has the spark, has that spark in a real way, or was it just a flash in the pan, right? So a summer's interviews is about selection, right? People will take a bet on you as long as they see a spark, which is why it makes it one of the best placement processes, if there could be such a thing, right? No placement process is great, but relatively speaking, this is the one that you really would find relatively easier to go about, because they're looking for a spark, and you can plan to show a spark. If you're prepared well, then it's easy to show a spark, right? So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be just doing that. I'm going to give you a case, an open-ended case of the kind that these guys normally give you, and then we're going to approach it in the way that they would hope that you would approach it in the first scenario, right? If you have any questions till now, feel free to sort of put them on chat. The chat has been radically empty thus far. Usually people start posting in stuff by now, so lots of people on this YouTube live. It just shows over 750 people, but actually YouTube routinely under reports the number. So when we, so if it's 750, it's more about 1500 people who are already on this call. So if you have any questions, feel free to sort of put them in on chat, and I'll sort of respond to them as and when I go it. The case that I had originally picked in one of the sessions was around how to launch a detergent in India, because that's one of the questions that had been asked in. But things get boring when we pick a category like detergents. So I've changed that a little bit in subsequent sessions. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be solving a case on a dating app in India, right? So we're going to just see how do you launch a new dating app in India, right? Now, the framework remains the same. The approach remains the same. How we apply it obviously will be dependent on the category itself. So I'll need to give you some category context before we go forward. Right now, one question that Shruti has asked, and thank you, Shruti, for asking this very basic and very foundational question: will one single framework help us? Right? No single framework is enough. But at the same point, if I was to give you a framework to solve in, this would be my number one framework to give you. Right? So this is simply an approach of how to pick out a problem and solve it, and you're going to find that I'm really using the ideas that you already have, and I'm just applying it in an industry forward way. I'm not going to teach you something which is radically new, because most things which are widely applicable are simple and everyone knows about it. It's just that how you apply it, right? So in that sense, what I'm going to teach you is stuff that you can apply in, let's say, 70% of the cases that are there in marketing. It will not cover 100%, but then that last 30% is very, very hard to cover in, right? So you go 10% here, 10% there, 10% there, 5%, 2%, right? But if there is a case to sort of that you should if there is a problem solving that you should definitely be good at, because it is the most common way of problem solving, it is this one, right? How would you launch a new brand in an XYZ space, right? That is the magical question that if you can get this one, if you can do this really well, then a lot of follow-up questions become easier, and a lot of other kinds of cases become easier. Thank you for asking that. So like I said, for doing this question in, let's give you a little bit of context. So we're going to call this app binder, and we're going to call this app binder, and before I sort of go forward on that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that we understand the category really well. So here's a question for you: what do you think is the typical gender ratio on dating apps in India? Men is to women. Okay, let me give you options here as well. It could be 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, 80-20, right? So YouTube doesn't give us the option for polls as much as I understand. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to put up your questions in the subject line, and then we'll sort of I'll sort of pick up things from there. Okay. In the meantime, let me run through some of the questions that have been coming in. Will tips for non-marketing, will you have tips, will this tips work for non-marketing interviews as well? Not so much. The last tip will, that is, so the last piece of this session will be super useful for you. Otherwise, I'm going to focus on trying to solve marketing interviews first and foremost. And I think most people on campus are very agnostic initially, right, in terms of a stream. So you should definitely, if you're not, even if you have a 5% chance of sitting in a marketing interview, you should attend this session, because it's amazing how many people have such a fun time working in marketing. Awesome. Okay, lots of answers coming in. Let me just take in the questions in as well. By the way, the names are amazing. This is another fun piece around doing this on YouTube. I feel there's a lot of language barrier, as I find myself not fluent enough when it comes to communicating English. How will I get rid of this fear? So I don't know your name, but what I can tell you is that what people care about in interviews is conviction more than communication. So yes, it is a barrier language is a barrier, and you must overcome that barrier. You have many years to improve that barrier. And so if you start working today, in 3 years you could be as good as anyone else on the planet, certainly, right? 3 years is actually tops. Like, anyone can be great in 3 years. We can if you really put your mind behind it, you can do it in 6 months. But your summer placement interviews are likely going to be sooner than 6 months. So the best thing to do at this stage, if your summer placements are around the corner, is to forget about the aspect of language, is to show them what you're good at, right? Most people, I think the way they go wrong is they think about their weaknesses a little bit too much. If you can fix it, fix it. But if you can't fix it, then it's not even a problem. Let it be. Focus on focus on impact rather than on grammar and more, right? So there is confidence that you don't have in the language. That's okay. Bring that confidence through your body language, through your hand gestures, through the quality of your thinking, right? Confidence is often just a function of how much faith you have in your own ability, which in turn is a function of how well prepared you are. So if you are mentally well prepared for the interview, then your confidence levels goes up, and therefore what impact comes out is much better, right? So like anything else, if you feel underconfident, it's just an invitation to work really, really hard, harder than the average business school student works in, and focus on practicing the ability to communicate confidently, whether the language comes out in English or in English or whatever it comes out. Don't worry about it. There are some jobs which will not open up to you because of the language barrier. You should accept that, and you should say, oh, that's fine. In 2 years, 3 years, I'll make up that gap. For now, I should focus on just getting the best that I can get from the skill set that I am. And you'll find that a lot more opportunities are available than otherwise, there. Um, Will this framework also cover cases which belong to service-based industries? You can apply the same framework to service-based industries. Fun fact: in my own summer's interview, it was a service industry-based question that I had solved in to get to my summer's job, right? So in that sense, the same framework would have worked in really well. All right, now lots of answers have come in the time that we were discussing this. I can see a lot of 60-40, 70-30. There is Arya who's gone one step ahead and said it's 10:1. So you always find those answers in as well. You know what? I can't find a lot of what I find a lot. I don't find a lot of is answers like 50-50, right? I mean, there is a one or two here which has come in, but largely speaking, people are a little more realistic. It's definitely, by the way, not 50-50. There is like, not even Facebook has a gender ratio of 50-50, right? Gender ratio on Facebook in India would be about 2:1, right? So so it definitely cannot be anything of that kind. But just give me a second, guys. Yeah, but like I said, lots and lots of questions have lots and lots of opinions have come in. The answer is 80 is to 20. But 80 is to 20 is like our friend Shojit says, it depends on the popularity of the app, right? So what happens is that 80-20 would be there for a good dating app, like a Tinder, for example, would have an 80-20 or something like that, right? And if any of you are using an app that is not as well known, then that person that you've been speaking with all this while may not be who they say they are, right? So you have to contextualize this information a little bit. But more to the point, if if the ratio is 80-20, even for a well established dating app, then that basically means that the bulk of the job of a new app is to make sure that there are enough women on the platform, right? Because if there are not enough women on the platform, then nothing, the app can't deliver on its key goal. It's basically at that point committing fraud, right? Because if the app can't work for most of its users, then it's no longer a working product, and products like that just go out of the market very, very quickly. Yeah, so in that sense, uh, uh, in that sense you have to make sure that that there are enough women on the platform, which is why you can reduce the marketing problem, and the marketing audience that you have to a universe of women, right? It's not to say that it's not going to be important to attract men. Of course it will be, but that problem is going to be much easier to do for you. What will be more complicated for you is to attract enough women. So when we do things like segmentation and targeting, and we look at the entire customer universe, we are not really looking at all people that could be part of a dating app. We are only looking at making sure initially that there are enough women on the platform, right? Which is why someone mentioned Bumble on the chat, and Bumble is a great example of why an app works, why that app works really well, because a lot of women prefer to be on that app, right? Which is what forces everyone else also to then engage on the platform itself. Okay, awesome. Now, the first step in solving any marketing case is to do segmentation, right? This is something that you're familiar with. I'm not going to go into basic segmentation techniques except to tell you that the segmentation is important and segmentation is useful as well, right? So defining a demographic based segmentation is always useful, and you just have to apply it based on what category that you are talking about. So for example, when it comes to dating, age is a very important criteria, right? Age is important, I guess, in most categories. Certainly in dating it's hugely important, because as people move through the ages, their needs change in rapidly, right? So an 18 to 22 or 23-year-old is very different from a 28-year-old, is very different from a 38-year-old, right? Whereas this level of differentiation may not be there in some of the other categories. So applying a demographic based segmentation is useful. Which one you want to apply depends on the category. In dating app, age is going to be massively important. However, age is just one criteria to apply it. What most people get wrong is that one segmentation technique is not enough. You need to have multiple segmentation techniques being applied simultaneously, which means that with demographic segmentation you also need to be applying psychographic segmentation, or in our industry terms we don't use psychographics as much as we use consumer typology, or you need to do a need state segmentation, right? So let's get psychographic first out of the way, because the thing is that psychographics or consumer typologies, the problem with that segmentation is that it is very hard to apply without real data, which you will not have in the case in most scenarios, right? Let's say they give you a case to solve and it's a 3-page case, then you might get information like this. Uh, 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 but the thing is, mostly they will not. Uh, Mostly they will not. Um, Mostly they will not give you this information, and so therefore, what will happen is that. Sorry, guys, just can you give me a second? I'm just getting a call in here. Just hold on for 1 sec. Let me just text the person once. Sorry, guys. Just give me 1 second. Awesome. So, like I was saying, most of the times this information is not available, and you can't really come up with this kind of segmentation on your own. Like I've just given an example of a psychographic segmentation. This was presented by AB and Bev in one of their very old reports, maybe 30-year-old reports in the US. And you can see the kinds of segments that they've come up with, guys. Here, the beer lovers, experimenters, trendsetters, aspirers, loyalists, sippers. It's very hard to be able to think about what kind of consumer typologies would be here, which is very hard to really come up with. Which is why, when you get a case like the kind that you get in, uh, you want to use something which gives you more information, like a psychographic, but is still easy to come up with. And that segmentation in most cases is a need state based segmentation. Right now, need state is something which is simply a benefit that which is simply a benefit that the consumer looks for from a category. So every time you consume a category, there is a certain reason you consume it, right? There is a certain functional reason that you consume it. That functional reason is what a need state is. So let's first understand the concept before I move forward and apply it in the dating scenario. If you take a category like chocolates, there are certain need states that exist in chocolates, right? So for example, some people have this routine where they consume dark chocolates at the end of the day, right? There's that end of the day indulgence, and in fact Bonville plays on that, as do a lot of other global brands as well. Because imagine a working professional who's come back home, needs a certain reward for herself, and so therefore wants to consume something which is a chocolate, but it's not that sweet, or perhaps is healthier, whatever reason it is. And therefore that reward at the end of the day, that indulgence at the end of the day, is what is where Bonville plays in, right? And then you have something like a hunger fix or a recharge, which is where a Snickers or a perk would play in, right? So you have that because obviously you need the sugar, but you need the sugar specifically because there is that recharge that is there. Then obviously gifting, self-explanatory. I'm consuming chocolates because I want to gift it to someone. And then there is that sweet craving that I get in a day. That sweet craving could be a craving that I in at the end of the meal, so that's a different thing, or after meal dessert, or it could be something like a sweet craving that I tend to share with a special someone, right? So in that sense, uh, 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 in that sense, that's a different need state altogether, right? So need states are basically reasons why you consume a category. In the case of dating, we're going to look at dating and relationships as the broader category, right? So what we're going to do here is basically we're going to look at need states that exist in the relationship space. And I've just, to keep things very simple, I've marked them on a spectrum, right? I've basically said that that let's go from absolutely casual, which is, let's say, to a social network, to something which is a little more, let's say, casual and fun, where Tinder, for example, plays in, to something which is a little more serious relationship driven, which is where an aisle plays in, then to something which is very, very serious, and probably probably something that a lot more people are forced to do than what most people acknowledge, which is a matrimony app, right? So in that sense, you have all of these need states which exist in, and you have different products that play in each of these need states. So you want to be able to think about when I'm thinking of a dating category, what are the needs that someone will have from dating and relationships, and then map those need states in. And the way to apply these things simultaneously is to just have one segmentation technique like this, one segmentation technique like this, right? So x-axis, y-axis, you put out 4 or 5 segments on each one, and then you suddenly have 4 into 4 or 5 into 5 segments, right? So for example, there is a segment which is 18 to 23 year olds who are looking for social relationships, social networking. Then there are 18 to 23 year old who are looking for casual relationships. That's another segment. Then there are those who are looking for serious relationships, and then they're looking for matrimony, and so on and so forth, right? So that's how you combine segmentation techniques. You take one, you take the other, have 4 segments here, 4 segments here, you combine it, you have 16 segments, right? That's how you do a classical segmentation. Now, one of the questions that people often ask is that, do we have to just apply to, or can we do more? You can do more as well, but then it will be, let's say, and I apply another technique here, so that's 4 into 4 into 4, right? So 64 segments have come up all of a sudden. So that becomes a 3D thing, and it's a little too complicated for people to worry about. So in an interview setting, that's not really expected, right? So a few segments like this is there, and in any case, very soon you'll have to figure out which segment you want to go with. Awesome. Okay, let me just take in the questions that have come in, which is lots and lots of questions have come in. People have opinions on which dating apps are doing well. Thank you very much. By the way, this work is coming in from an actual project that I worked on in 2016, helping a dating app launch in India. So my understanding of the category is substantial, but it's very dated as well. It's about 5 years old. So happy to sort of take in your advice on what is working really well. All right. Someone's asking about guesstimation. I will guesstimation. Lots of online resources are available. So maybe guys, you can share in some links if you have put it up so that our community can benefit from that as well. Guesstimation is important to do as well, but it's not something that I'm going to be covering up in this session. Although you will see some of the same principles being applied here. Okay. In an app-based business, you have all the data that you can imagine. That is absolutely true. In an app-based system, you'll have lots of. So, for example, Netflix has thousands of segments in which it sort of cuts, slices, and dices its users, but they have all of that information. But if you're interviewing for Netflix, then you will not have that information, right? So they might still ask you how you will solve a particular problem, like how would you figure out which show you want to market to what audience, and you'll have to show them that approach, right? So the approach is important to master in. The data just helps you fill in the blanks and make your reasoning a lot more logical. So don't hide behind data at any point, right? People who are good at problem solving are just good at problem solving. The data simply helps them be right more often, but it's not a replacement for problem solving. Most students are bad at problem solving. They're not bad at generating data or figuring out what to do with that data. It's just that they don't know how to approach a problem in the first place, right? So the data is almost irrelevant here. We have done this. I'm not giving you any information, but whatever we are sort of going about it is pretty much there. Okay. Another question on sales here, guys. I'm going to give you a little bit of resourcing on sales as well later on. But for now, we're going to keep building on this case, right? So this is a framework that we're building in. The first step is segmentation. The next piece, if you remember the old STP framework, it comes as targeting. Now STP is not always relevant, and I'll show you how it sort of goes off. But you need to figure out which of these segments you want to target in, and that's where the next part of our piece comes in, right? So some segments rule themselves out immediately, right? So for example, if you launch a matrimony app for teenagers, it's an app that's one, not going to work, and two, you'll be behind bars for coming up with that idea, right? So some things obviously rule themselves out on their own, and whatever is left in is where you have to think about which segment should I go with. Now most people do it based on no real thought process. I'll tell you what the principle is. This is how we do it in the real world, and then I'll tell you how you should do it in the interview, because like we articulated, there's not enough data to apply the principle religiously. So the principle is very simple. How we look at segments is we figure out which is the segment which is both highly attractive, which you can see on the y-axis, and where my chances of winning that segment are high, right? So I'm looking at a segment which is going to sit in the top right of this corner. Attractiveness of a segment is measured by how large it is, how quickly it is growing, how profitable it is. Obviously, consumers who can pay more are a more attractive segment for me. Similarly, likelihood to win is measured by both internal and external factors, right? So internal factors would be something like what is the product strength I have, what is the brand strength I have, what is the distribution strength I have, is this a new brand I'm launching in, or is something old altogether? And then there are external factors as well, right? So for example, if you have a big competitor already with a very well-loved product, then it makes your chances of succeeding very less, right? Now the well-loved product matters, because you can sometimes have large competitors who are not loved. Like imagine a social network, for example, right? The reason that people are on Instagram has nothing to do with the fact that they like Instagram or they like Mark Zuckerberg. There's no brand love. It's just network effects, right? Everyone is there, so everyone has to be there. So therefore, just because something is large doesn't mean there's a lot of brand love. And especially when the brand love is not strong, other brands can come in and can make a real play, right? So in that sense, there are internal factors and there are external factors. That's the principle on which we typically choose. From your context point of view, what you need to do is you want to pick up a segment, and I'm going to give you suggestions right now, and I'm going to come back and share why these suggestions I'm giving in 5 or 10 minutes from now, right? For now, just hear the suggestions. Pick a segment that you're personally familiar with, as much as you can be familiar with the case. Pick something that the market leader is not good at right now, right? So for example, if I go back on that Facebook analogy, a very good way of thinking about it is the fact that because Facebook is largely an ads business, anything which is not going to be non-ads based is going to be an interesting social network to win it, right? When I say Facebook, I mean an Instagram, right? Now, or you can say it's largely an image-based platform. So therefore, what is better than an image? It's a video, right? Which is why TikTok succeeded in a way that that Facebook and until that point Instagram had not. So in that sense, you want to pick something that the market leader is not good at, and then you want to pick something which is niche was likely to grow fast in the immediate future, right? Go back again to that Instagram versus TikTok example. The reason TikTok succeeded a lot was because Instagram, while it was visual, it still wasn't based on short videos and so on and so forth, right? So that's the principle that you have to keep in mind. Why I'm giving this to you is, in particular, why I'm asking you to pick something that you're familiar with. I'll explain it in just a bit. Okay. Good. Let's keep going in. So in the dating app scenario, you have a lot of social networks which are quite big in. Then you have Tinder and Bumble and so on and so forth. Why don't you guys tell me what is the segment that you would have picked in here? Right now, sitting in 2021 October, if I ask you launch a dating app in India, what segment would you be picking? Just put your thoughts in, but mention both, right? Just don't say 18 to 23 if you want to say 18 to 23 serious relationships or 24 to 31 casual relationships, right? So put the exact segment which is a function of both age as well as the need state. Yeah, put it up on the chat, and then I'll share what we did in that case, as well as what we're going to do today as well. While you put in your answers in, let me take in a couple of more questions. All right, making data-driven decisions and building student around it to come to a success is something we need to develop. I think that's a hugely important point. I can't explain to you how important storytelling is. And in fact, one of the sessions that is very popular that I take in for Kraftshala students is on presentation storytelling. And this I do when people are actually in their internships, because most of you are bad at presentation storytelling, at building a narrative, and you don't even realize you're bad because all of you are so bad, right? So when I was in campus, I was also pretty bad, but I used to look at the guy next to me and think, it's the better you man, right? I'm at least better than this person. But it doesn't work like that. All of you are bad because none of you, unless you've worked in a consulting environment or in investment banking before you came into an MBA, which most people have not. So in that sense, most of your skills are not very good. All right. Lots of answers coming in here as well. So we have, let's see, 24 to 31 casual, 24 to 31 serious, 18 to 23 casual, 24 to 31. Okay, 24 to 31. There's a lot of 24 to 31 casual. I think that is, by the way, the largest space for a dating app. That's something which is there. 18 to 23 is also quite large as well. But the thing is, when you're in 18 to 23 space, because the college, at least it used to, before COVID sort of nixed the world that we understand it. Before we sort of got into this piece, because in college, at least you have, you go to parties, you meet people, it's very easy. Whereas when you've sort of passed out from the college scene, it becomes harder to sort of meet new people in, right? So both 18 to 23 and 24 to 31 have typically been great segments to sort of go into. The segment that I've done for this case is 24 to 31 serious relationships. But the great part here is that you could have picked up anything and built a very good case around it. So which segment you pick in is almost irrelevant, as long as it's not one of the stupidest segment to pick in, right? So as long as you don't pick in, a social network, like for example, that's not exactly in the space, or you don't pick in casual relationships for 32 plus, right? Because it's going to be such a small segment. At first, the number of single people are very less. Then number of single women who are looking for casual relationships at the age of 32 plus, and to build an entire dating app focused on that is not a very logical way to go about it, right? So as long as you don't pick up a segment which is obviously off, You can pick any of these segments. You can share why you're picking it, and you're fine, right? And whenever you share reasons, always frame it in the case of attractiveness and likelihood to win. Awesome. Let's keep things moving here. One of the tips that I can give you on top of this is, when you're describing your segment, try and see if you can describe it and you can sharpen it even more. So for example, if you're going to look at an app for serious relationships, it's a dating app, it's for serious relationships, I'm going to focus on women. Most of these women are likely to be working in that space, right? That's not to say all of them would be. Let's say 70% of those women would be working, or 75% of those women would be working, right? And that tells me then that I might as well consider my audience to be, if 70% of my audience is going to be working, then I might as well think that that this is going to be great for a working professional in particular, right? So in that sense, I'm going to try and target a segment as sharply as possible. Why I pick a sharp segment when I'm doing this strategizing is something I don't want to go into it right now, but it's very important that you remember that principle, that whenever you're coming up with product and with communication which is fresh and which is new, it's very important to be sharp as you can make it. Yeah. So most people do the opposite, by the way. They go into an interview and they say, my segment is 18 to 45-year-old men and women. There's nothing in common between an 18-year-old man and a 45-year-old woman, right? So that's not a segment. That's a pipe dream, right? So when you're coming up with this kind of a case, it's helpful to be as sharp as possible. Now, here's where we take a deviation from the classical STP framework, and what we do is, instead of going straight into positioning, what we do is we first figure out what is the insight or insights that are going to be in play here, and then we figure out what is the product and the positioning that we're going to come up with, and both go together, right? Based on the product, only the positioning will also come in, right? So because you're doing that. So why do I bring in the insight piece here in? Because insight is what marketers are defined by, right? And I can do a 2-day workshop just on insights. It's that important for you to figure it out. And I don't want to sort of confuse you a lot with it, except to tell you that insights help us unpack why people do what they do. It's like, and most people either are lying when you ask them why, or they don't even understand that they don't know the reason for themselves, right? People are very good at making choices, very bad at explaining why they made the choices that they made, right? You are here in this session because you think that your attendance was mandatory, or because you think that you want to be good at summers. But really, a lot of people are here because they've heard that, look, this is a session that can change lives, so I don't want to miss out on something, right? So it's more fear of missing out than really sort of trying to take value in. Similarly, you thought that you wanted to do an MBA because you want to build a business career in, right? That's the stated reason, but the unstated piece is maybe an aspiration of going out of whatever you've been doing thus far. Maybe it's the aspiration of having a very prestigious brand on your CV. It could be a whole range of things which are there, right? So insights essentially deal on the problems and the why of it, and how you discover those whys which are actually relevant for you from a product and a communication standpoint, is where the inciting process really comes in. Now, this is just to give you a little bit of context. I don't really want to give you a session on insights. What I will do is I'll give you the tip on how you have to come up with an insight and how you have to use that insight in your marketing case. The way you do it is, you put yourself in the shoes of the consumer, and you really pay attention in figuring out who this person is and what are the problems that they would be facing in from a category standpoint, not from a brand standpoint. So don't think binder here. Think the entire dating and relationships piece that this woman is going through here. What are the problems that she would be facing, and what are the challenges that she would be facing in both respect to the app and in her life as well, right? And that's why I had told you to pick a segment that you're familiar with, because the more you know about the segment, the more chances are that you'll be able to do a good job when it came to insights, right? So I hope by now it is clear what the tension is, right? So for a dating app for women in the late 20s, the problem and what could be the problems that I'm facing, right? So, and any dating app in India, obviously security and privacy is always big, right? We have a weird country, culturally fairly conservative, and so therefore there is that challenge which is there. Then there is the belief that apps don't work, right? And that's something which you see in a lot of dating app behavior, that people install Tinder, then they uninstall it, then install it, then uninstall it, then install Bumble, then uninstall it, so on and so forth, right? So it's really like, you go through that phase where you think something's going to work out, it's not going to work out, not going to work out. A lot of that which happens. And by the way, because I worked on this category, I can tell you that The reason it doesn't work out often is because of the sheer number of choices that these apps give you, right? Because anytime you, let's say you get a mutual like, right, you obviously want to speak to that person, you get that dopamine hit, but then if you're swiping, then you're still sort of continuously swiping, saying, can there be more people that I can connect with? Is there someone better out there, right? Instead of committing to the person that you've actually gotten matched with, you are looking to keep figuring out if there's someone better, right? That's the worst way to sort of get anything done, right? Right now, let's say you're in this session, but you're thinking, oh, what the heck is going to happen in the match, or what the heck is going to be there for dinner, or what am I going to do about this assignment? And suddenly you're neither here nor there, right? So in that sense, the best thing to do is to be able to commit it, and that's one of the reasons why dating apps don't work. So that's a challenge. Then then there obviously the presence of non-serious men, right? Big issue for women, right? They want some you're going after a segment that wants serious relationships, but a lot of men don't want to do that, and it's not gender specific. Obviously the women also may not want to do that, but that's not your target segment at all, right? So for women who are looking for a serious relationship, it's a problem, and once again, people aren't open with their choices, so this is a challenge. And then obviously, if you go to that last point, which is pressure from parents and peers to settle down, then that's almost at a human level. Yeah, it's not about the app anymore. It's just that you're getting under all this pressure from people that you should be settling down, right? Obviously, parents put in pressure because they have this timeline in their head that you need to be doing your engineering by this date, MBA by this date, marriage by this date, children by this date. It's the timeline is set for you because that's how our community is supposed to be. So there is that pressure, but also the pressure comes in from peers, right? You may not believe in that, but it's hard to sort of go against the tribe when all of your friends are getting married and getting into serious relationships and so on and so forth, right? The pressure from peers is so strong. I mean, I'll tell you my own story of summers, nothing to do with the dating category. In summers, I was convinced that I wanted to build a marketing career. I didn't want to apply in any company other than marketing, right? And every piece of advice I got from my seniors was, no, this is a big consulting company, you should apply here. No, this is a big investment bank company, you should apply here. And like even someone as convinced as I was that I don't want to get into this, I'm happy with the sales and marketing career. Eventually, I still applied to one private equity and one consulting company, right? And then and one investment bank. I had to thank the investment bank because I suddenly realized that this is a very, very bad idea, right? So in that sense, the pressure is tremendous. You might think that you're going to operate in a certain way, but when you actually get to it, you see all of these people taking different choices. It's very hard to stay rooted to your own strategy and to your own plan, right? So in that sense, this is something which is also there. So if you think about this user, you can come up with 15 different things, right? I'm not saying these are the biggest issues as well. I'm just saying think of all the issues that you can think about, and then take it from there, right? Now, before I go forward here, let me just take in some of the questions that have come in. Keshav, I'm guessing he means like imagine what are the biggest problems? Money. By the way, fun fact: one of the experiments that we did in this dating app was we ran a profile. It was not a real profile, and we wanted to see how people respond to different salary levels. So you could see the salary levels. It was a different kind of a dating app, right? So we actually put in money. People could see how much someone was earning in if they wanted to reveal that information in, and people's preferences changed radically if someone was making a lot more money than the other, right? Now that's not something that's new to anyone here, but it's still fun that it gets validated by data. Shruti says security. I think that's hugely important. This is a good question. Bhavika, can we pick multiple segments like dating apps for 18 to 31-year-old women? So you shouldn't pick multiple segments because the more segments that are in, the more the level of inciting will change, right? So for example, if I were to ask you this question, Bhavika, that what is the biggest issue here? Is it security and privacy, or is it the belief that apps don't work? Is it the presence of non-serious men? Now that question will change as the segment changes. So if you're 18 to 31, maybe security and privacy is the biggest thing. Now that doesn't mean that 18 to 24. Now that doesn't mean that 25 to 31-year-old women don't have that issue. Of course they have that issue. Of course it's an important issue. May not be the biggest issue because the stakes are different, right? When you're 19 years old, the life is in front of you. You think that you're going to find someone and get married in many years. When you're 29, you've seen, you don't have the comfort of that luxury anymore, right? Because either you've already been in relationships that didn't work, or you've been at 29, you still don't have a serious relationship, and so your confidence in your own ability to find someone organically is very much lesser, right? So the more you have different segments, the the more difficult it is, because for that 29-year-old woman, even though security is an issue, the bigger issue is might be the fact that there are non-serious men in here, right? Because she's okay with the, if okay with the security and privacy thing. She's handled herself quite comfortably over the years. A 19-year-old may not be that comfortable, right? So in that sense, it is important to keep your segment singular, sharp. Okay, this is the segment, and the sharper your segment, the easier it will be for you to solve the case, the easier it will be for you to crack that interview. No two ways about it. Okay, so only pick one segment. Don't pick two segments in here. Okay, wherever I've seen your question in, I will come to your question towards the end, right? Because it's not related to the case that I'm solving in, but I will come to it in the end. Now, once you've written down the insights, your job is to come up with a proposition. And a proposition is a combination of product plus big idea. Okay. So big idea is nothing but your positioning, if in the classical framework. Big idea is the communication piece. But before you come to the positioning piece, you need to come to the product piece here, right? And in the product piece, what you should do is whatever tensions that you've identified, which are related to the product level, you resolve those challenges, right? And so you try and think of how would you resolve it, right? So for example, for example, we talked about the security and privacy thing. So a lot of apps have this thing where women can call without revealing their phone numbers. Men can't do it, right? Bumble has its own way of solving the privacy piece. Woo has its own way. Tinder has its own way, so on and so forth, right? So Truly Madly has its own way of going about it. So in that sense, you can pick in any feature, but the tip here is the more distinctive the feature is, the more your own problem solving will come to the fore. So for example, one of the things we talked about was that too many profiles means people don't commit to a profile, right? Therefore the chances of making something happen go much lesser, which is why you can create an app which is just going to show you one profile every day, right? So I remove that incentive to talk to multiple people. I just say, okay, this is the one person. If this person is broadly okay for you, go ahead and try and make something out of it. Otherwise there'll be a new profile the next day, right? So in that sense, I give you one profile, or I give you a handful of profiles. I don't show you a million people to swipe with, because that's something which is which is a different dopamine challenge in of itself, right? So in that sense, you use the insights around the product to solve the product piece of your case, and then you use the tensions around your consumers and the human level tensions to come up with a communication insight, right? So for example, we said this woman is feeling pressure from parents and peers to settle down, right? We talked about both those things. So that piece can be expressed in a slightly different insight forward way, which is, I have one life to live, and I'm afraid I might end up spending it with someone I'm not in love with, right? Because like I said, imagine this woman grew up thinking that that she's going to fall in love and everything's going to happen organically. She's now 29. Things are not really working out for her in that sense. So she's under pressure from everyone saying that, no, you should settle down. There is the right time and age for it, and so on and so forth. And she's now tempted to do that. She's fearful of doing that. But she's afraid that if she takes the arranged marriage route, then things may not really work out well for her. Okay, great. So the way you resolve this insight is that you come up with a big idea, which is your positioning, that resolves the insight, differentiates you from competition, does the whole gig. So an example of that is, for example, wasn't love marriage the original plan, right? So if you run ads on Facebook, on Instagram, which is with this kind of a creative, which is, this is going to work really well for consumers of that space, who are really sort of struggling with this thing that, yes, I want to get married and fall in love before that, but I also have a lot of pressure from parents and so on and so forth. So to that consumer who's in both boats right now, encouraging them to just sort of stay true to their original plan might work really well, right? So in that sense, this kind of a communication might work really well. The problem is, of course, you'll not be able to come up with anything creative at the spur of the moment, right? So if you can't, then just at least say it with a lot of conviction and passion, right? Because at least you should be sold by your own idea. No one expects you to come up with a great communication, great big idea on the spot. That's, we have professionals for that. It's not even marketing professionals. We have creative professionals for that, right? So you don't have to be very creative. Come up with whatever is logical, and then just say it with conviction, so that at least you're able to sell that idea reasonably well. Okay, so we've then written the insight, which is the communication insight. We've then written the proposition, which is both the product and the big idea. Now, interesting questions have come in. All right. So how do dating apps really solve or add to building human relationships? Is it possible? How to answer these kinds of questions in the marketing interview? So I think if you're if you haven't worked on a dating app, you answer these questions from your own experience of having used these apps or knowing someone who's used these apps, right? So one of the things you have to keep in mind is that, let's say there is a project which is on your CV. If it is on your CV, the level of questioning is going to be very high. So if they see a dating app project on your CV, this is a question that they will ask you. So if you have a CV, if you have a project on Hotstar, by all means prepare for questions like these, because you will get it. But if they ask you organically, there's nothing on your CV about dating apps, but it just comes up in conversation, you didn't sort of bring it up with the intent of actually sort of speaking a lot about it. But let's say it comes up and they give you a dating app case. In that scenario, these questions are less likely to matter because they expect you to not know too much. But let's take the classical scenario where it was on your CV, they asked you how to launch a dating app in India. Then they might ask you these kinds of questions. If they ask you these kinds of questions, then your job is to delve into the consumer level understanding that you would have, right? So in what circumstances does a dating app work? In what circumstances does a dating app not work? With what kinds of people does a dating app work, likely to work? With what kinds of people is it not likely to work, right? So in that sense, there are pros and cons is how you're going to take this. You don't want to answer it in the general sense, because the thing is, dating app is a huge industry, right? More than one third of all marriages in the US were happening through online connections well before Tinder became a reality. I'm talking about pre-Tinder days. It was already a huge industry in the US, right? And obviously, since Tinder, things would have only gone up, because since the apps have come in, things have become even more easier. But dating app has challenges. Not everyone, it's not for everyone. One third is still not the majority, right? Two thirds are still sort of finding their partners through other means, and so on and so forth. So in that sense, you want to list down the pros and cons of it rather than giving a definitive answer of it, and the how of it essentially comes through your consumer understanding. I don't want to go in there because we'll sort of get deviated here from the questioning. Yeah, but it's a good question to ask for any project that's on your CV, because these are the kinds of questions that can really help you crack the interview. This is an interesting one. The go-to-market strategy can be time-driven. How do we speculate the changes within the time frame to match the pace of the industry? You work with a time frame that you're comfortable with, so that you take it out of the consideration. The best thing to do in order to solve complexity is anything that's too complicated, just assume that this is the time frame that you have, state that assumption, and then work with that assumption throughout. Do not confuse yourself that do I have 6 months to launch it, 12 months, 18 months, what happens in 5 years? Just say, look, I'm going to look at it as a 6-month launch, and I'm just going to, this is how I'm going to naturally do it, and so on and so forth. So take an assumption, remove that problem completely from there. Does religion matter for consumers in 31 to 45? Abhishek, now you're asking me stuff which is not marketing related, but it might help you navigate the dating app piece well. I don't want to sort of, I mean, the answer is yes, of course it matters, but I don't want to sort of entertain too many questions here, because I want to stay rooted to helping you crack interviews, right? Is there any course for internship preparation too? You can take the Kraftshala programs that will help you prepare for the internship. If you don't get selected, then you should ask me at that point, and I'll tell you what else are ways to sort of do it. In fact, there's a lot of resources that we share, and even when the applications are floated in, so that in case anyone doesn't make it through, they still have something to go about it. Excellent. Let's go back then and go into something that is a little complicated, lot more. I mean, I hate pricing decisions, and I hate pricing questions, right? One of the biggest decisions that I took as a brand manager on Maggi noodles was to shift the pricing from 10 rupees to 12 rupees, right? So all of you who have to give change now for that one packet of Maggi noodles, you know who to blame for, right? And it's a decision that we took in after a lot of research, and still, like, we couldn't predict exactly what would happen. We thought our sales would drop in a lot more than it actually did, by the way, FYI, which is very unusual, because all the times that we previously moved from 5 to 6 or 10 to 12, the world had fallen, really, even on a strong brand like Maggi noodles, right? So in that sense, pricing is a tricky decision, and I wouldn't want you to think that it is, it should be sort of just taken out lightly. I'm not going to give you a framework here. I'm just going to solve this case, and then I'm going to encourage you to solve every case, not through a framework, but through just thinking about the impact of pricing on your consumer. Okay, so that's the advice. Now let's apply that advice to this case to understand how it is applied. So in this case, I have men and women both on the platform. I'm not really taking the men wala scenario here, right? So in that sense, pricing, am I even going to be pricing it for women? That could be one thing, right? Do I want differential pricing from men to women? That could be one thing. Is the pricing going to be that it's a freemium? Am I going to match my pricing to mainstream, which is let's say a Bumble or a Tinder? That's the pricing, or am I going to go more expensive, right? So all of those questions would be there. Now the thing is that how well you can talk about pricing is a great reflection of what kind of a marketing professional you're going to become, right? So pricing is a great differentiator in that sense. And I'm going to make that point by giving you an example of an app called IL. Okay, now IL is an app that existed in 2016 as well. It exists in 21 as well, and it's an app for serious relationships. So most of their audience is above 30 years of age. And this is a very old screenshot, by the way. So I don't know if this is the exact screenshot of the website or not, because like I said, I built this case 5 years ago. But basically, these guys do things a little differently than most dating apps, right? So for example, most consumer products are built so that they get you doing things on the app as quickly as possible without any friction. So if you download a gaming app, you're playing the game without filling in any details. If you go on Tinder, you are you are asked to start swiping immediately, even without Tinder asking you for your sexual orientation. They don't even ask you that. They're like, all right, you're a guy, I'm going to start showing you pictures of women, right? And if you can want, you can go ahead and change that, say that you're not interested in that. But as soon as you download the app, I want you to start taking action on it. I want you to start getting to it, right? I want to create as little friction between new users and the product benefits as much as I can. If you go to Facebook and you install Facebook, they'll not ask you to upload an image in the first time you install it, right? You can go ahead and do that, but they'll start showing you a feed immediately. They'll populate that. So every app is sort of designed to do that. IL is not like that. So one of the things IL does is that it asks you to fill up a form. That form is a subjective form. So it can take you 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, depending on, like imagine filling up a subjective form, right? That's one. Then the second piece is that it's an approval process. So they won't approve you on the platform right now. They can take up to 2 days to do it. Okay, that's one. Then the second piece is the pricing piece. So here on IL, you can see any profile that you want, right? So you can just scroll through and see anything that makes sense to you. It's not like Tinder where you only see one profile at a time. You can see browse 100 profiles. You can send any one of them a message. But here's the thing, right? In 2016, once again, the data is at that point. In 2016, if you sent a message to a user and the user accepted that message, they just pressed accept, so that now you can speak to that user, speak as in communicate with that user. The price of one message was 700 rupees. Okay, for one message. Now this is in 16. I don't know the pricing right now. So you have to buy a pack of 3, right? And if the one user accepted your message, and then that's at that point of time, Tinder's premium pricing was 700 rupees a month, right? And so it was obviously a much more expensive product. Now, why did they have to do that? The reason that they were doing all of these things was because it was enhancing something which was very core to the proposition, right? They said it's for global Indians, which is another euphemism for people who are well off. Okay, that's what it basically means. What does global mean? It means that people are well off. So therefore, I'm going to make this expensive. So I'm going to make this expensive, but not only I'm going to make this expensive, I'm going to make it expensive in the specific way that you would only reach out to a user if you were genuinely interested, like, right? Which is why you would weed out all the people who are not looking for a serious relationship. If you're a guy who does not want to get into a serious relationship, is open to something only casual and fun, then you'll be on Tinder or on Bumble or any of these apps, right? You'll not go on to IL, you'll not fill up that form, and you'll not spend so much money just reaching out to one person who's anyways looking for a serious relationship only, right? So in that sense, what IL was doing was it was using pricing not just to make money, it was using it to strategically enhance the proposition. And that is what great marketing problem solving does, right? It converts a negative into a positive. So in that sense, when you think of pricing, think of how you can add value to your users through that pricing. Don't price it like the way the pricing is done by the general store next to you, right? One of the common mistakes that people make is they say, I'm going to offer premium stuff and mainstream prices, right? I mean, I mean, that's the amateurish answer, right? If you're offering a premium product, do it at a premium pricing, right? I mean, that's the magic of marketing. Otherwise, you're never going to get enough margins from it. You're going to go out of business, right? So at the best case scenario, you try and use pricing to enhance the proposition. If you can't come up with anything, don't worry about it. It's anyways a good case scenario. Make sure it's not distracting, right? So make sure it's not that amateurish that I'm going to do premium stuff and I'm going to offer it at mainstream prices. Like if it was an ideal world, sure, you do that, but the world is not really ideal, right? So you don't really want to get into that. Now we're almost at the end here, because when it comes to distribution of an app, it's not very hard. You just get it listed on these stores. I mean, it is hard to get it listed because these are painful companies. Google and Facebook, Google and Apple both have a list of measures. Apple in particular, hard to get your app there, but it's fairly simple in the sense that you just fulfill their criteria and then you're sorted. And then you come to the next piece, which is the media and activation piece, which is, by the way, a place where a lot of marketing students really distinguish themselves. They really sort of show a lot of skill here. So we're going to solve this piece here, and we're going to do it by first getting in your views as well, because I haven't heard anything from you in a while. So here's the thing, okay? Here's a question for you. Which of these channels is the best platform to run ads for a dating app targeting to working professional women, right? Which is Binder essentially. So 4 options there. Put up your answer on the chat again. You could, and by the way, this is just another way of saying that which platform do you want to invest your money behind, right? Because you can run ads on LinkedIn, you can run ads on Google search, you can run ads on Instagram, or you can't exactly run an ad in office, but let's say you want to do in office events, which is like, let's say, in the cafeteria, put up a stall, do parties, whatever, right? Just sort of do something in office, because that's also some place where the women are there. So those are the 4 options. There is one right answer here, and I'm very curious to understand what comes in here. Okay, let's see. Okay, so Instagram and LinkedIn are dominating. One person says Google search. More people might say it. Actually, more people coming in. Let's take this one by one. Okay. So let's pick up Google search as a start. Right, Google search is not the right answer, and the reason for that is not because search is not a great platform. Search is a fantastic platform. Google, that's what made Google such a profitable company. It's because when you search for something, you show intent, right? So if I want to, if I'm an AC manufacturer and I want to identify people who are in the business of who are in the market for an AC, like Google is a great platform, right? Because anyone who searches for ACs for 30,000 rupees or under 30,000 rupees, I know this person now is in the market there, right? The only thing better than that is if someone searches on Amazon, which is why Amazon is the world's 3rd largest advertising platform after Facebook and Google, right? But search is a great platform to identify intent. If enough people were searching for apps for serious relationships, if enough women were searching in India for something like that, then search would be a good platform to target. Unfortunately, the reality is that not enough women are searching for it right now. So therefore, you're not going to get a very good return on investment because the audience is going to be fairly small, right? But so that's the only reason search doesn't make sense right now. But maybe in the future, a few years from now, search might actually be a pretty good option as well. Okay. Let's see. Does anyone have in-office events here? No one has picked up in-office events. This is interesting. Oh yeah, I can see one person has picked it up. Now the thing about in-office events is the fact that we're all obviously talking about pre or post-COVID here. Now, when we actually did research with consumers, one of the consumers, when I say research, I mean we were speaking to users. One of the users said, I'm okay if my my family knows I'm on this app, but God forbid if my work colleagues find out, right? That's an actual verbatim user comment. I've never forgotten it of years from the time that this one first made it. And the reason she made it is because the office is a very, very tricky environment for women in particular, right? Because we spoke about different cultural norms, right? So what is expected of women is different by society in general and workplace in particular than it is for men. That's just the society we live in. So therefore women have to be certainly very cautious. And then when you realize that people's personal evaluations of you affect their professional evaluations of you, that you understand that no woman wants to mix the personal life, right, with the professional. Most guys also don't want to do it, but women, because of these particular problems, they are very, very wary of it, right? So in that sense, if you actually do an in-office event, you may not get permission from HR, but even if you do it, it's not going to be an environment where a lot of people are going to feel open with you, right? So they're not going to probably do it. Okay. Then the third piece is a lot of people have gone with LinkedIn, right? And this one is also interesting because it's working professional women. And one logic suggests that, like all the working professionals are on LinkedIn. So why shouldn't why shouldn't we sort of make a LinkedIn work? And in order to answer that question, I think we should put ourselves in the shoes of a user and really understand why one particular platform works really well, better than everything else, right? So let's say this user is one of you. Imagine one person, right? 29-year-old woman, either you or one of your batchmates, right? If this person is lucky, they got a great marketing role out of campus. If they're unlucky, they went into an investment banking role. But in either case, any job that you go into, there are going to be good days and bad days, right? So let's say that this person goes to office and it's a bad day, right? None of the projects that she's working on is really moving. She's very frustrated. The whole day goes up in pointless meetings and so on and so forth, right? So at 6:30 p.m. she wants to step out of office, go back home and just relax and come back with a fresher mindset. Now, the thing is that she probably works in one of Delhi, Mumbai or Bengaluru, right? That's where most of the companies are based in. So what happens when you step out of office at 6:30? You get stuck in traffic, right? So she's sitting in a cab and now she's stuck in traffic and she's now getting doubly frustrated, right? Frustrating day at work and now this frustration of sitting and not being able to be comfortable in your own home, right? So what does she do to pass time? She does what every one of us do. She takes out her phone and she picks up an app to spend her time on. In this occasion, she picks up Instagram, right? And as she's scrolling through her feed, she's seeing what her friends are posting. And what do you think her friends are posting in, right? Today your feed might be a lot of memes, for example, right? Because that's what a typical 23-year-old, 24-year-old, 22-year-old feed looks like. But as you sort of grow in, memes still continue, thankfully. So no one who loves memes has to worry that they're going to disappear. But there's a lot more else which comes in, right? So people are getting married, those images are there. People who got married a few years earlier, their kids are the news about the kids are coming in. People are going on vacations because you earn money for the first time, and so you can therefore earn substantial money for the first time. So you can go to Northern Lights and you can see these beautiful images there. And some of the people some of the people are getting promoted at work or they're winning awards, so that also is there. She's seeing all of these things and it's making her, how do you think that's making her feel, right? She's obviously super frustrated, right? She looks someone who gets married of a batchmate and she's like, like this guy was a will for me. And like and now I'm sitting in this situation where I'm single and this person has done that, right? She looks at this image of another friend in Iceland and she's thinking, here I am inhaling the fumes of Gurgaon, whereas look at how people are really progressing in, right? So in different aspects of life, people seem to be moving forward even as she's stuck in her life. And in that moment of frustration, if there's an ad for an app that promises to solve at least one part of a problem, then the chances of a consumer actually installing that app and trying it out go up radically, right? Which is why context really matters in marketing and in media planning in particular, right? One of the best principles I can teach you today is that you want to talk to consumers when they're most open to hearing from you, right? You want to convince your parents by the way, good advice generally, right? If you want to convince your parents of a trip to Goa, you want to speak to them when they're open to hearing that message, not when they're already frustrated with something else or the other, right? And that same principles applies in marketing as well, that you want to talk to that consumer not on LinkedIn when she's thinking about professionalism and professional growth and career, and like she's consuming all these emotional, nonsensical, heartfelt messages that people keep posting on LinkedIn. She doesn't want to consume it there. She wants to do it when she's thinking about her friends and so on and so forth, and she's thinking about her own life and she's thinking about what things she can do to spend her time on. And then suddenly there's an app and she's like, this might actually work in, and what's the harm in giving it a shot, right? So you want to talk to your users when they're most open to hearing from you, and you want to build your entire media plan, which is basically where you want to invest money behind based on this one principle, right? Which is why you'll obviously invest behind Instagram. Facebook advertising, I've mentioned it because Instagram, the advertising platform, is the same. And you'll obviously do single events, because one of the things is that when you're single at the age of 29, suddenly all your friends are married, most of them, or at least in a serious relationship, and so therefore you have a lot more time on your hands. So if you're single, then you're open to sort of doing a few things, right? So that's why one of the biggest platforms for dating app advertisement is actually Little Black Book Delhi, right? It's a platform for people to discover what's local about Delhi. Now there's a Little Black Book Mumbai and there's a Little Black Book Bangalore as well, and so on and so forth. But any platform that helps you discover what's happening in the city is going to be a good platform for you to invest behind. Now the thing here is that, and this is right at the end, the last thing I'm going to teach you in this case, right? The thing is that you can make this analysis much better if you can include an aspect of digital marketing as well. Now, most of you have not done any reasonable digital marketing. Doing a Google ad certification means it doesn't mean anything, right? That just teaches you the tool without teaching you any marketing, even though you should do it, right? It's a good thing to do it, but it's not really sort of teaching you any real marketing in that sense, right? So in that sense, even though your understanding is limited, unless you're coming from that background, you can still apply a lot of common sense and get to a very good place, right? So one of the ways in which digital marketing helps us is, instead of looking at these large segments to run ads on, I can create smaller, sharper, hyper segments, and then I can run much more customized advertising for that based on something that I understand about my users, right? So I'll give you an example of how this is done in. So let's say that we go to the dating app scenario, Binder, right? One of the things that you'll discover if you were to work on this category is that people, when they move cities, let's say they're based in Pune and now they're going to be working in Bangalore, when they move cities, the likelihood of installing an app goes up radically, right? Because new networks have to be built in, friends are not there locally, you are in need of some support, therefore the chances of you installing an app go up radically. By the way, same behavior can be explained for a laundry app as well, right? So when let's say you're based in Pune, your family home is in Pune, you already have a way to have your laundry. Now you move to a new city and suddenly you need to set up your own processes and so on and so forth, right? So in that sense, moving cities is a very effective way to figure out whether someone is likely to be in need of something, and then you can customize your communication as well a little bit to that. But obviously, you need to have some understanding of what kind of targeting parameters Facebook or Google can give you. Like, for example, one of the things they can give you is specific interest, right? So based on the content you consume, based on what you reveal about yourself, they can figure out what kinds of things are interesting to you, and then you can run ads based on that as well. So one of the things that you can do, for example, is you want to do a singles event, you want to build that singles event around a theme, right? So let's say that theme is dogs, or I want to get all pet lovers, all dog lovers, and I want to do an event just around for dog lovers, right? So in that sense, Facebook can help you identify that, and you can create something like Puppy's Day Out, by the way, an actual event that we did. Or you can pick something like a Harry Potter theme. You can identify who all loves Harry Potter. You can create an event which is Harry Potter themed party, and then you can get all the Harry Potter fans in one room, and then you can do fun, interesting stuff there, right? So this is something where there's a little bit of creativity, but also a lot of strat that comes in here as well. All right. Before I move to that final piece of advice, I just want to take in a couple of questions that have come in as well. All right. So LinkedIn, if reach is the main priority, if conversion is the main priority, then Instagram. Aditya, so if anyone's not familiar, what he's referring to is a marketing consumer engagement funnel where users have different goals, and depending on whether you're trying to go for just making people aware of your brand, which is reach, or you're trying to convert those who are already aware of your brand and try and convert them into actual app users, it could be conversion. So that's what he's referring to here. This is I would sort of encourage you to not sort of apply this without caution, right? In most cases, marketing campaigns have both reach as well as conversion as their primary goals. In some cases, they have a singular goal, and in those cases, in those cases, there is a good reason why you have that goal, and therefore it makes sense to sort of think about ideas on that. But in this case, it will not be accurate. What if it's anonymous registration in office events? Yeah, but people will see you registering, right? So why do you want to do it in there? Shaurya says, wouldn't it be too expensive to go to offline in such offices? Absolutely. That's the other thing about physical events. They're very, very expensive to do. So that's another good reason for not doing it, but it's not the strongest reason. Even if it was cheap, it would still not make sense. Yeah. Shaurya is again right here. So I could have just posted your comment in and not given this entire piece. The time and place of the nudge is very important. That's actually good. So one of the questions I used to have in this session, Nikhar, was at what time frame would you get best results, right? And I should give these options like, Wednesday, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturday 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., or Friday 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. midnight, right? So and you'd have different results, and most people will get it wrong, even though they would be the audience for this kind of a campaign itself. All right. All right, this is so Nikhar. I mean, I've shared a lot of insights, but I'd like to focus this discussion on placement interviews. So what I'll do is I'll keep it focused on how to solve cases for now, and then we can come back uh, uh, to it there. Vivek says, what if the woman is not frustrated, right? So the thing is that I give you that example, not to say that it takes frustration for someone to necessarily install the app, but the fact is that when you look at your friends getting married, the chances that you would yourself, if you're thinking of getting into serious relationships, the chances that you will sort of be experimental are much higher if there is an app which is putting this in front of you. So there's this great book called Persuasion, which is written by Robert Cialdini. Fantastic book on persuasion. He wrote a great book called Influence, which is, I think, almost 30 years old. But then he wrote a book called Persuasion, which is more recent, 4 or 5 years ago, and where he talks about how if you can make an idea prevalent in someone's mind, then the chances that they're going to take action on that are much higher. So don't want to go. This sounds abstract. I apologize for it. But basically, the whole gig is to try and focus the user's attention on something which puts their personal life in the picture. And if the idea is already there in the head, then the chances for them to sort of install the app are much higher, right? I was just using the frustration as a way to simplify that basic idea, right? Related question here is, this case is too specific and too generic. It is not too specific and it is not non-generic. If I was running this on Maggie noodles, how would you figure out what's the most frequent way, what's the way to do it, right? You would be, I ask you a question, do you want to run ads at 9 a.m. When someone is rushing for class, if the audience is college students, or do you want to run it at midnight, where all other options are likely to be less accessible? And if someone is awake at midnight, then they're much more likely to be hungry because dinner was maybe 3 hours ago, 4 hours ago, something like that, right? So in that sense, the same principles will apply. This is not in any way an unusual case, right? So please keep this in mind, that the approach is going to be exactly the same. You will not have to deviate for 1 second. Awesome, great questions, guys. I'm going to wrap up my session. It's been a long session for all of you, I know that. I'm going to wrap this up by giving you one, I hope, useful insight, which has nothing to do with marketing per se, everything to do with cracking interviews, right? If you've run through some of the questions that come in these interviews, there's a lot of these kinds of questions, right? Tell me about a time when you had to manage a conflict, when you had to make sense of a lot of information, when you have to overcome challenges, when you have to manage something in a short period of time, and so on and so forth, right? So in that sense, these are what we call structured behavioral questions. And the base of these questions is basically the interviewers understand how did you respond to on the job situations in the past, and then based on that information, they predict that how are you likely to respond to that situation in the future as well, right? Past being a predictor of future behavior, right? And it's a technique which is it is just widely regarded as an effective interviewing technique, because the thing is that past is a good predictor of future behavior. It's not to say that it's the only predictor, right? So don't get me wrong, I run a learning company. I've seen people transform radically from their past behaviors, right? I've seen it happen day in and day out. But that doesn't mean that the past is not a good predictor of future behavior, right? And when you're sitting in an interview, you don't really have a lot of information, so you have to go by that a lot, and it's a safe option, right? That's why companies go about it. Very few companies take the risk of ignoring that information. So this is an effective interviewing technique, happens and will continue to happen for the rest of your life as well, right? So these are questions that you should get very, very good at. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to share a principle per se. I'm going to share a framework, but I'm going to give it to you in a way that will delight you, because I'm going to give an actual interview answer. This is a candidate who was sitting in an interview and gave this answer, and you'll see that this answer makes no sense. The candidate was not prepared for this question, got completely nervous and lost their mind, and this will be quite clear. And then I'll give you the way that this person should have given that answer in, right? So just the actual answer that this person gave, and after he had worked with us, what is the answer that he had come up with, right? So the same answer after preparation as well. Let's listen to the actual answer that the student gave in, right? So the question is, tell me about a time when you had to manage conflict or differences within your team. The candidate answered, and this is verbatim, so the grammar is not going to be easy to understand as well, but I'll read this out. Yeah, so a lot of differences was due to a campaign that was given. It happened more in STM Technologies, to be honest. STM was the company that he had worked with pre-MBA. What used to happen is they used to give us two to three campaigns, and they used to give us deadlines to complete. By the way, all of the information here is changed. STM is not a real company. Anything else that you see in this answer, like these are not real names and real stuff. We have anonymized it. So what used to happen is they used to give us 2 to 3 campaigns, and they used to give us deadlines to complete all the 3 campaigns. So prioritizing on which campaign we should go first and which should be approached later was given by the team, and it was not given by the management. So a lot of times that was a major issue of conflict between what we can say the BDs, because every peer wanted to have more achievement. So these are the conflicts that we used to face a lot, but most of the conflicts were resolved by internal discussion and communication that we used to do. So yeah, one good thing was we never needed a manager to intervene to distribute a campaign. So that was one good thing. If this didn't make sense to you, the same thing, the same response came from the interviewer as well. She also couldn't make much sense of it. So she asked a follow-up question that, can you share what was your individual contribution in this? Then the student responded. So we had a couple of people who were sometimes having a lot of differences with the entire idea of how we should approach everything. So most of these conflicts were solved by mutual discussion. Like clearly we used to sit and used to have both people talking about what they really want and what is the correct thing to do, what's used to resolve the conflict. Now the irony of all of this is that this was actually a very good candidate. This answer, if you look at it in isolation, you'll think that this candidate is not a good candidate. That's not true. This was an excellent, smart individual, well prepared on a whole host of marketing answers, but they had not prepared for this question. They were completely blindsided, and then like bad things happen when you get into these kinds of situations, and so therefore the interview was lost. Now the thing is that the way to answer this question is very simple. You do it in something there which is your situation action results. If your campus is not teaching this to you, then please go online and do it. Or you there are a lot of Kraftshala resources as well. I'll share some towards the end of the session as well. Yeah, it's a very you figure out what this. If you first explain the situation specifically, then you specifically share the actions, and you specifically share results. But what most online resources don't teach you is that you should also focus on what competencies you want to highlight. Every time our interviewer asks you a structured behavioral questions, they are assuming or hoping to see certain competencies being demonstrated. And your job is to make sure your answer actually has those competencies demonstrated. So for example, if someone says that, tell me about a time when you had to manage a conflict or differences within your team, what I'm most interested in, if I'm asking that question, is what is your current skill level when it comes to dealing with people. So people orientation is the skill I'm very, very interested in. And the thing is that's why it's a very bad answer to give that I never get into conflicts. Well, then you can't manage people. If there are even 2 people working in, there are going to be differences, there are going to be disagreements. The question is, how do you manage these disagreements? What is the level of empathy you show, and so on and so forth, right? So in that sense, knowing that this is a question that is going to check my ability of how to deal with people, it's helpful for me to structure my answer, right? The other thing, the other competency I can check through a question like this is analytical ability, because how I structure my answer, how I structure my problem, how I structure my solution tells me will tell the interviewer whether I am a candidate who's very logical, or am I a candidate who's a little bit all over the place, right? But more importantly, people orientation, less importantly, the ability to structure, right? So what I'm going to now do is I'm going to read out the answer that the student worked with us, and then reframe the answer. Same candidate, same situation. This is the answer that this person prepared after they'd gotten into trouble, right? So I'm gonna, same question was asked. Now this is the new answer that the candidate has prepared. Yeah, so I specifically remember one instance from STM Technologies where we were a team of 3 and we were asked to send our email campaigns announcing the new launch for clients of 3 different regions by a given time. Now, while we were given the overall timeline, the order of priority of these campaigns were completely left to us. We could send 10,000 emails every 6 hours because of the server capacity. This was one of the biggest launches, and we expected to generate 20 to 30% of annual leads for each geography. The conflict came up because all of us had our annual targets linked to a specific region. Mine was India regional, my colleague Vinod's was US, and Rohit's was UK. I proposed that we send the emails out in the order of India, UK, and then US, thinking about when the clients would be awake and thus more likely to open the email. But it became a heated discussion where everyone wanted to prioritize their markets. I had suggested India not because it was my market, but because it helped the team goal. But the others did not see it that way. Okay, so now I understand it. They have the targets linked. It's a precious resource. Everyone thinks that, like when he says that we should send India to India clients first up, everyone thinks that he's just prioritizing his own market, and therefore the conflict has arisen. And it's obviously a high stakes campaign because a lot of their targets are going to come from this email campaign. Now we get to the action piece. The only way I could see to build their trust was to help them maximize their performance, keeping the overall goal in mind. So instead of arguing based on opinions, I put together the data of both mine and their clients and showed them what would be the best time for us to send an email to each of them. So I also shared with them the typical customization I'd done in the past so they could do better with their clients. We then collectively agreed to send the emails to maximize the open rates at a client level and not at a regional level. So this is where the problem solving comes into action, right? You collect data at a client level and you say, okay, forget regions. Let's just prioritize it based on client. And obviously all clients which are likely to open it up first will be prioritized first, which means anyways, the India clients would come in a little earlier than the rest of the clients, right? So that's how the problem is averted. You don't go by region, you go by clients. And then he's also shown some of the customizations that he's done in the past, which have worked really well for him, which he's given it to them so that he can build a little bit of trust with them that, look, I'm not trying to maximize my results at the cost of your results. I want the team goal to be great, which is why I take some of these tips that I've been using, which have worked really well for me, right? As a result, we maximize the campaign results. Another good outcome was the conflict proved to be the starting point of greater team cooperation between the three of us, right? That is how you should answer questions like this, right? It's a clear situation, action, result. If this candidate, who by the way was good at people orientation, was good at analytical ability, had given me this answer, then this is good enough for this person to get selected. Literally, they can come in Bermudas for the interview and I still hire them. Actually, if someone does come in Bermudas in the interview, I'd probably hire them a little bit. I mean, the likelihood of them getting selected is a little higher, but not so much in the companies that are recruiting from your campuses. Yeah, so that's the last piece. I'm just going to get to more questions here, which I've not answered. So if you have more questions, put them in the chat right now. In the meantime, I am going to repeat the information. We will only launch our programs once in the year. That will happen between January to March, depending on which 1 week in January to March. We can't launch in 50 campuses together. So we pick up campus by campus by campus. So your campus's number will come in. You can go ahead and apply right now as well, but we'll only process your application at that point. We'll select between 4 to 8 students in each campus. And once we select you, you can pick up any of the programs that make sense for you. So that's that. And let's get to what happens next, right? Now, obviously, there's so many things I could have covered in that I haven't covered in, right? So one of the great questions that are asked frequently is what's your favorite ad? What's your favorite brand? All of that questions. Then there's so many other structured behavioral questions and other personal questions, how to introduce yourself and so on and so forth. That is there. There are additional resources in marketing, additional frameworks that are there. And there are some specific insights on companies and so on and so forth. There's stuff on sales, there's stuff on CV making in case you're still allowed to edit your CVs. All of those resources I'll send you an email. But the way you'll have to earn this piece, way you can do it is by giving us feedback on this session, right? So based on how this session was for you, give us feedback, help us improve this session, and we'll use the same email ID that you're giving us and send you resources there, right? So so that's something which I will put up on the chat as well. Maybe Resham, if you're there, you can put it in, or let me see if I can put it in as well. Otherwise, you can go use this QR code and that's there. The other way that you can keep learning is by following us on YouTube, which you're in right now. So just press that subscribe button, or also go ahead on Instagram, where we do a lot of carousels, a lot of resources, a lot of insights on marketing, careers, and so on and so forth that comes in, right? So so once again, the QR code is there, and if you want to go take a link in, then I'll once again post this as well, so that you can go to that website in, and this is how you keep sort of learning it. Yeah, awesome. Now let me come to the questions that I have not been able to answers. Bhavika said, how do freshers deal with these questions and structured behavioral questions? I hope, Bhavika, the approach that I've given you is making sense to you, and that you'll be able to apply this, right? So that is there. Okay, looking forward to it, Irma. Thanks for the amazing session. Thank you so much. I don't know if I'll be able to come, depending on COVID and so on and so forth. I've been to Irma once, and like I was just amazed by the number of people who were interested in marketing. I had very little idea about the campus until I'd gone in there, and a couple of the students that we've had have come in from Irma have been amazing as well. So it's I definitely would love to sort of come in there. Same for you, Keshav, as well. Thank you so much. All right, Farhan, please mention about the broad types of marketing cases. I think that variations of the case that I've just shown you, which is a launch case, are very, very common. And then uh, uh, there is stuff on. So let's take an example, right? So one of the cases that I got on campus was around this automotive company, which was struggling due to a competitor, and they had to come up with a new product, and then they had to figure out how to market that product. So how you would solve that case is exactly how I've shown you. You go through that entire piece: segmentation, targeting, insight, proposition, pricing, distribution, and then media and activation. But the additional question that they'd asked at that point was around brand extensions, which was that should they launch it should they launch it as a should they launch it under the same brand name because it was an existing brand, or they should come up with a new brand altogether? So there was that aspect of brand extensions which was there. These are the most familiar questions that come in, but then depending on the level of data someone gives you, they can come up with a lot more, right? So in that sense, I can give you the case of which city should I launch my new credit card in, but I'll give you lots and lots of data for you to process and figure that piece out, right? And I'll give you conflicting information, and my job would be to see how you contextualize that information while still applying the marketing frameworks at hand, right? What I've, like I said, discovered with you, this is 70% of all cases get covered in some way or the other. And then there are cases on analysis, which is I just want to see how you do general problem solving. There is a guesstimate based thing which I can add on to it. There is pricing based thing which I can add on to it. There is brand extension piece which I can add on to it. Those are the common ways in which the cases are complicated beyond this, right? But I wouldn't waste too much time on them because the chances of getting there are less. And if you're in a good space there, if you understand the basics well, then you'll be able to apply it there. It's not, like if you see here, I haven't really taught you great frameworks. What I've done is I've just made your current frameworks work a lot better, because the next time you're coming up with a media and activation, all you have to do is to remember that one rule, which is talk to your users when they're most open to hearing your message. If you want to sell an ice cream, if you want to sell a pen, if you want to sell whatever it is under the sun, you just talk to your users and they're most open to hearing your message, right? So in that sense, the principles are very simple. It's just about using them calmly in the interview, using the information that they've given you. That's what's the hard piece, and that's what something that has to be kept in mind. All right, let's take Shruti's. Talked about a launch-based case. How do we take forward an existing company that wants to increase reach, profits, or any other goal in general? So I just talked about it, Shruti. The case that I'd gotten in my summers, which was about that automotive company, essentially a motorcycle company whose technology, whose motorcycles were sort of becoming a little old, and there was a new player in town, new brand in town, which was seeing a lot of growth in. And so the company wanted to respond to that. And so the question was about how, they'd come up with a product, but they wanted to understand how they should respond to that, right? So that was something which was there. All right. Kiran says, any suggestions for digital tool certifications related to marketing? Any free certifications are good to get tool understanding. So Google is the most common one, and I would say 8 out of 10 CVs have that certification. So it doesn't really do anything in terms of distinction. Obviously, if you are part of a Kraftshala program, then you get an industry certification, but in summers you can't do that, right? So in that sense, anything which is free, which you don't have to pay a lot of money for, is useful. Other than that, a certification makes a difference if it's hard to get into, right? So for example, why is your degree from an IIM more valuable than your degree uh, from uh, from from an institute that just started 2 days ago? It's because it's hard to get into an IIM. That's just the way it is, right? It's not as if the education in that IIM is necessarily better. It just means it's hard to get into. So in that sense, a certification is valuable only if it is hard to get into it, and you have to cross a lot of hoops, right? So in that sense, I wouldn't worry too much about certifications. Projects matter a lot more. So one of the things that we focus on in Kraftshala always is that people are not going to learn marketing by just listening to people, right? I mean, I can give you inspiration in this session. I can help you crack an interview to some extent. I can teach you marketing, right? To help you crack marketing, you need to be working on the dating app with me, or you need to be working on the projects that we give you, right? And as you figure out how to get user understanding, compress data, convert that data into an insight, and so on and so forth, as you see lots of paths and you take decisions, and then you end up in dark and unnecessary places, and then you go back and then go to a different place. That's when you learn, right? So you learn by doing, and you learn by doing under the guidance of practitioners. So certifications only show intent. You can show intent in any way. Don't spend money behind it. Just take the free ones, and answer any questions related to that. Be prepared to answer. It's a good question. Once again, okay. Thank you, Shruti. I'll try and sort of come to Tapni as well. I haven't been to your campus. It's one of the regrets that I have. I've been to, I think, 46 or 47 campuses out of the 50. I haven't been to 3 or 4. I haven't been to. I'm Bodh Gaya. I haven't been to Tapni. A couple of places that I have to figure out. All right, Keshav says, what about distribution? Please do discuss that with examples like Maggie. All right, so we haven't talked about distribution at all. And obviously, because this is where this case is not a good distribution case. Now, when it comes to brands like Maggie or Parle G, like classic FMCG products, distribution is a huge lever to pull at. And the way to approach distribution is that you should look at it as distribution also adding value back to the proposition, right? So just like we did it in pricing, we said that it shouldn't distract people from the proposition, but if you can add value to the proposition, if you can make the proposition stronger, that's even more amazing, right? So for example, you're launching a premium product. You want to make sure that it's available on the right platforms, and so on and so forth, right? So in distribution, you want to make sure that it's not available in every place, but it's available in the right places. I think the one thing which has changed a lot is a lot of distribution now happens through e-commerce platforms, and there a lot of strategic choices are made. And I can't teach you a lot of concepts here. They are a little specific, but I'll give you one example in case this example comes in, right? So let's say that you are a personal care brand and you want to launch your brand. Let's say, there's a, let's take an actual example. Let's say the Vidu launched recently in India, right? It's a very or it's an all organic, ethical brand which does not do animal testing, no cruelty, etc. All natural products and so forth, right? The brand name is Vidu. When they only launched it you could buy Vidu only from their website, or you can buy it from one of the platforms. I think it was Nykaa or something, right? Now the thing is, why did they choose Nykaa, right? So now the reason they choose Nykaa is because building it with one platform is easier than building it with every e-com platform. So let's say, what is big in personal care? There is Nykaa, there is Amazon and Flipkart, which are your classical platforms. Then there is Myntra, which does personal care, and then I have my own website, right? That covers most of it. There's also Purple and so on and so forth. But let's say these are the platforms. Now the thing is, the Nykaa consumer is the most evolved personal care, beauty and personal care consumer out there. That's the knowledge of the platform that you need to have if you want to answer this question well. If you don't have that knowledge, I can't really help you, right? So in that sense, knowing that a lot of users are there on that platform help you. And then there are realities which come in. So if I launch it on 5 platforms, then I have to, it's operationally much harder for me to manage and succeed in all 5 platforms. So if I just choose one platform, the thing is, I get a lot of push from that platform itself. So if, for example, I'm Nykaa, right, and you are Vido, and you come to me and say, I'm going to launch only on your platform, what all can you give me? As a e-com platform, I would love that. I just launch it on my platform, make sure none of my other competitors have it for the next 6 months, right? Because if anyone wants to buy Vido, they will have to come to my platform, and that enhances the prestige of my own platform. So as an e-com platform, I love doing exclusive launches. By the way, I'm not taking into account the regulations and all of that, which might make it more difficult. But this is how classically things have happened in e-com globally and in India as well. So in that sense, then as a platform, I can give you a lot more. I'll say I'll promote your product here. I'll get these influencers which are contracted with me to promote your product. I'll give you these, I'll do sampling and stuff like that. This is the kind of pricing I'll give you, and so on and so forth, right? So in that sense, distribute and so in that sense, distribution then adds as a not as a value add, because the most evolved personal care and beauty consumer is on Nykaa, and then also it's operationally easier for me to manage and control it, right? Otherwise, what happens, I have to think of all product pages, I have to look at distribution everywhere, I have to make sure everywhere I'm answering all questions, all FAQs. I want to make sure supply chain becomes complicated. If it's just one platform, I know how to manage Nykaa, so I'll just manage Nykaa. Otherwise, if it's Amazon, it's a different scenario, and so on and so forth. So distribution is very much linked in one way to adding value, and then the other way is just the reality of it, right? If I'm a small company or a small brand, I don't want to spread it too wide. I want to make sure that it becomes successful with one set of consumers, and then I expand it from place to place, right? So that's how the distribution questions are sort of tackled in. Thank you, Keshav, for raising that. I'm sure we'll not discuss these ideas at all. Okay. Okay. By the way, on the distribution, I'll send you some resources. Look at the piece that we've done around with RB. We've created these pieces on innovation. We will send you the link there. How to distribute a new innovation has some of the principles I've spoken about. So you can also come in there. All right, this is interesting. There was a case where 4 flavors of ice cream are to be launched in. What clarifying questions can we ask the interviewer? It's a good scenario. So basically, when you launch new flavors, the first thing is, why are you launching new flavors? Okay, so once again, like I used to work on Maggi noodles. Why does Maggi noodles have different flavors? Okay, different reasons exist. So for example, one of the things is I want to make sure that there are some people who have barriers to consuming my product because of health reasons, right? Therefore, I have atta noodles and oats noodles. Why? Because I want to make sure that these users are still eating some brand of Maggi noodles. It will not be the classical masala noodles, but they can have the veg atta noodles, or they can have oats noodles, and so on and so forth. So that's one reason that I have a variant. Another reason I have a variant is because my category is very experimental in nature, right? So think about Lay's, for example. Why does Lay's have new flavors coming in every year? It's a marketing strat. They come in, they launch flavors, and then take them out, right? Come in, launch flavors, take them out, right? So in that sense, what is the goal for me to launch new flavors in? That's the first thing. Like, what is exactly my business goal? Is it that I'm trying to drive frequency of consumption? I'm trying to drive penetration. I'm trying to address certain barriers to consumption. I've identified new trends, and so on and so forth. If they don't give you an answer to that, then you just assume that these are the reasons that I'm going to do it. Then the second piece is, what do I know about my consumer to be true at, right? So for example, if it comes to ice creams, what are the reasons that people consume ice creams? And so therefore, can new flavors add to those reasons in some way, right? So for example, one of the need states is for ice creams exists that people consume ice creams after meal at night, as a way for the family to have a sweet ending to a dinner, and so on and so forth, and it's in that family consumption. Okay, so the kinds of flavors I will launch in that kind of a scenario is very different from if I say that this is a flavor that I'm launching in because I'm going to these consumers who are tired of these old standard flavors that exist in, and I want to taste something which is completely unheard of, interesting, globally relevant, and so on and so forth, right? Or converse of that, which is interesting but is locally relevant, like the kind of flavors that Naturals has, and so on and so forth, right? So I want to understand a little bit about my consumers, which consumer I'm going after, and what are their need states. And the third piece is, what is my brand's current positioning at? So am I doing this for a new brand, or am I doing it for an old brand, right? So for example, Mother Dairy has a certain brand positioning. Some of the best flavors that get launched are in Mother Dairy. The problem is, because it's Mother Dairy, it's not a very exciting brand. People don't try them out a lot. But actually, if you go, it's very fresh ice creams and lots of great flavors. That same flavor if Haagen-Dazs had launched it would have gotten a lot more traction. For example, it would be like 5 times, 10 times more expensive, but but the brand matters, right? So your ability to succeed, because Mother Dairy largely a more family driven brand, more in-home consumption, your the flavors that will succeed there will be very different than the flavors that would succeed in if your if your quality walls, if you're Haagen-Dazs, if you're Baskin Robbins, and so on and so forth, right? So in that sense, three things: one, what is the business objective? Second, who is the consumer and what are they looking for? Third, what is the current brand all about? Yeah. And then if you ask these questions well, then you'll know which flavors are going to make more sense, right? And then obviously the right answer is chocolate, because who else wants any other flavor in life? Okay. Price versus growth. Okay, we have Farhan again. 4 brands given their price and quarterly growth given. I'm going to charge you now for this, okay, for giving specific consultation on this. How to improve revenue, right? You can report to me, Farhan. I am very open to bribes in all circumstances. A total of 8 data points. How to improve revenue. Nothing else mentioned. How to approach. What question to ask. Again, I can, I mean, again, how do I phrase this? Like, there are multiple ways, once again, to approach it. You can apply the same approach that I just taught you in the last question, or you can take a completely different approach. I think the larger piece here is to if you want to solve any marketing question and you don't know where to start from the consumer, start from different hypotheses, and start proving or disproving the hypothesis, right? So one of the cases, and I'll teach you this in a different session, which is internally at Kraftshala we call it PHS, which is progressive hypothesis setting, where you set a hypothesis, then you come up with sub hypothesis, and you keep proving and disproving it until you figure out what the problem is and therefore how to solve it, right? So it's a little too detailed for me to sort of cover it here, but hopefully in one of the other sessions that we do, I'll get a chance to sort of do that. Okay, couple of things on BK on campuses coming in. Noted. Resham is going to keep a track of this, and she's going to help me there. Also, a potential for upselling and cross selling. I don't know, Nikhar, if this is in relation to any other pieces that I've said, but if you can give me a little bit of context, I think it'll help. All right, how to approach whether to launch in a particular geography or not. How do you figure out how to launch in a particular geography? You apply the same framework of attractiveness and likelihood to win. Okay. See, this is the thing about marketing. Okay, I've taught you a very generic framework. You can apply it to any situation. It doesn't even have to be a marketing situation, right? You ask me a question, Varun, how do I identify who's a good romantic partner with me? I'll take a framework. I'll say, look at it from an attractiveness and likelihood to win, and then just go with the person who's on the top right? Same framework. With geography, which is an attractive geography? How do I measure the attractiveness of a geography? How large is the geography? What is the growth potential? What is the profitability that I'm going to have? Now, profitability question will be dependent on logistics. So if, for example, I'm thinking about Maggi noodles, it's more, if I have a factory in Goa, it's very expensive for me to deliver it in the Northeast, right? Because west to east, but it's much cheaper for me to deliver that to Maharashtra, which is right next door. So, so profitability changes obviously by geography, but the thing is, it's still, the parameter is still there. How I calculate it varies. Likelihood to win, again, things which are there, right? So what is the competitive intensity? What is my distribution strength there? Am I more strong in Maharashtra versus the Northeast? From a distribution standpoint, I look at internal factors, I look at external factors, and then I make my call, right? So attractiveness and likelihood to win, that's your framework for any of these questions. You can ask me a question, which channel to pick in, right? Should I go for online channel or offline channel? Why? Attractiveness, likelihood to win. Should I go for wholesale or do I go for grocery? Attractiveness, likelihood to win. Just put in the piece there. All right, good. Let me then pick in this question. I'm doing SEO on my own website, but I don't know how to do it, how to do other people's website SEO. Okay, then figure it out. I mean, it's the same process. So I don't know how I can help you there, right? SEO is a fairly logical skill. Like, there are certain ways to go about it. If you're doing it on your own website, you should be able to do it. So if you have a very specific question, then I can address that. But once again, SEO questions are not likely to be cracked, not likely to be asked during the summer's piece. Okay. Okay, I'm just running through the questions that have come in case I missed any question. I remember there's one question that I did want to answer, which was not related to marketing. I think this was it, right? Yeah, this was it. Web's question. I don't know if Web is still here with us, but it's a good question. Person who loves to read about different and random aspects. What would you suggest should a person start reading in order to develop problem solving skills or to build confidence? Um, I think if you like to read, then you should. Uh, um, uh, I mean, there must be books on problem solving. I'm not quite familiar with it. In my experience, most people get good at problem solving by solving problems. So, in that sense, like you can get good at problem solving uh, by looking at problems objectively and figuring out where you typically go wrong, and then sort of taking that piece away. I think progressive hypothesis setting. I think that's a technique that one should master. So any technical resources on how to come up with a good hypothesis and sub hypothesis and how to solve them would be great, right? So, for example, let's say that the interviewer says your sales are down by 6%. What is your growth strategy? Now, sales are down by 6%. People say is a problem, but that's not the problem. That's just a symptom, right? Your job is to understand exactly what has led to that 6% degrowth, and then figure out what you can do about it based on the hypothesis that you generate for it, right? So problem solving is largely about figuring out what the problem is, and then having enough knowledge and enough imagination to be able to apply yourself there, right? So the knowledge and imagination come from reading, from prep, from expertise, from talking to users and all of that. Whereas figuring out what the problem is a technique that you can learn through PHS, and then you can apply it elsewhere. So I didn't make the modules on PHS that we actually run in Kraftshala. So I don't know where we sort of what kind of books we would have read in order to come up with. I've largely sort of, when whatever my contribution to that topic has been, my own experience of problem solving, and I found that you don't have to you don't have to you don't have to learn it in a very specific way. Like, for example, you like to read, yeah, let's say you don't like to do projects, right? But okay, let's say that you say I want to get good at Chinese. Okay, now how would I get at Chinese, the language? That could be an interesting way and an interesting problem to solve it. Or I want to have a strict schedule where I sleep always on time, right? That's very hard for many people to do that, right? So you can solve that problem, and you can get good at problem solving by just applying a problem solving framework to that very simple problem. But the application of it is important. I don't think just by reading you can get good at it, but obviously, like, you can improve your knowledge, which will help you in solutioning, and you should have the basic frameworks in mind, which is there, right? So problem solving, I think, is there. Confidence is I mean, I would reverse it, and I would say that uh, the best way to solve for confidence is by figuring out what takes away your confidence, right? And the answer is different for different people. Some people are underconfident only in one area but not so much in other areas. Other people are underconfident on a range of things, and why they're underconfident could be just, like, the feel that, oh, I'm just new to this subject, and therefore I'm underconfident. And a lot of you should be underconfident in marketing, because the way it is taught on your campuses is very superficial, and it's hard to learn as well. So even if it is being taught well, it's not easy. You only learn it by doing it, right? So that's what I've told you, and as someone who runs a learning company, based on that insight, I can tell you that it is still very hard to learn it. So it's okay to be a little bit underconfident, as long as you can take criticism, and you can use that criticism to improve. That's something which is valuable. So in that sense, to build confidence, you have to ask the reverse question, which is, how do you lose confidence? Why do you lose confidence? And then figure out what your problem is, right? Is it because of something, like I said, which is that marketing is a subject, or does it have more deeper psychological reasons? Like, for example, you've had someone who's important in your life, who's sort of not giving you the confidence. That could be one thing. Or you're just sort of born with that genetic trait, which most of us to some extent have, which is that we have this imposter syndrome and so on and so forth. So in that sense, like depending upon that, then you can figure out what materials you want to read at. But once again, it's a problem to be solved. So maybe that's a problem that you solve in, that you first figure out what are the different hypotheses, then you read upon those hypotheses. Then when you read, you just do a simple Google search, you will find more hypotheses, and then they'll also tell you what ways to go about it. Personally, I found that confidence comes from once again doing and overcoming things, right? So the way I get people good at interviews is by giving them interviews, right? I don't do a lot of prep in absence of getting someone. Okay, let's do it, right? You're scared of an interview, let's just do the interview, right? What are you scared, what are the questions that you're most scared of, right? Let's do that, right? Let's do a stress interview. No one actually does a stress interview in reality these days, right? But people still feel stressed, so it's good to do a stress interview. From a preparation point of view, right? I want to make sure that you encounter these situations, then you articulate your fears, and then those fears are then solved from a problem solving point of view. And so therefore, your confidence goes up, your ability to deliver goes up, and confidence in one area feeds confidence in other areas, and through that you can really solve a large part of your life as well, right? So if you get good at one part in life, then you can really use that confidence to get good at other pieces as well. And that's the beauty of growth and learning. All right. Let me then take this last question in. Yeah, we're at 9 p.m. So I'll take this question in. They obviously judge our observation skills, says Vedic. Can you please tell us how we can improve or how we can work on our observation skills? Um, I don't think they are. I don't think we have a very effective way of checking observation skills in interviews. Sometimes you can detect when someone doesn't have good observation skills, but largely speaking, people observe things when A, they're relaxed, and B, they're mindful. So really, the question that you've asked me is, how do I, in a high stakes environment, not in, let's say, in a conversation like this, which is low stakes, but in a high stakes environment, how do I stay calm and how do I be more mindful? And the way to do that essentially is by practicing that, right? So a lot of people get calm by practicing calmness in a stressful situation, right? So the next time that you feel a certain level of stress, that's good. You frame that as, okay, now this is a testing ground. What is getting me worried, and can I articulate that and get myself to be calm, right? So for example, some people, they get very angsty because they think that these summer placements are very important, and like, what will happen if they don't get a good summer job, and so on and so forth. All of those true, but still, like, it's okay, right? I mean, whether you get a great job out of your campus today or you get it in 5 years, as long as you're good, and as long as you keep getting better, opportunities will open up to you in a massive way. So instead of worrying about what will happen in the process, you train yourself to say that in the long term everything will be sorted. I just need to make sure that I'm able to apply myself here, right? So that's how you get yourself calm. Now the question of how to apply myself here is a little different, right? I can say I want to apply myself, but I might still find it very hard to do it. So in that sense, mindfulness is also a function of practice, right? So imagine going into a session tomorrow in your B school, and some of the sessions are going to be boring, right? If not the majority of them. And how you respond to that session is very important, right? Most people keep their cameras off. They listen to a session, but they're not really there, and then you get into the habit of not paying attention, right? So the way to be mindful is to be practicing it, right? Is to just get yourself back and to sort of pay attention there, and then use things like a 2-minute meditation technique at the start of the day or at the end of the day or sometime in the middle, to be able to center yourself back in. So meditation works really well for a variety of people, and it has excellent health benefits. So all the research on meditation is that it both works for many people, and that it has long term lasting benefits. So if you're a creative person, if you're an analytical person, whatever it is, meditation does tend to bring out the best in you, right? So Jerry Seinfeld does it, as do lots of other people. So in that sense, you can use that to root yourself back in, but essentially it will come by practicing, right? So get yourself in a situation where it's hard to pay attention, and then pay attention, right? Let's say you're speaking to someone and you find them boring, pay attention, right? Just train yourself, and obviously you lose focus after a while. but gradually you'll build up more. So let's say you start with 2 minutes, and then you do 3 minutes, and then you do 4 minutes, and then you do 6 minutes, and then you do 8 minutes, and then you do 11 minutes. That's how life sort of moves in, right? So you won't go from 2 minutes to 30 minutes, but gradually your mindfulness will improve, which means that you'll be able to pay attention, which means you'll be able to use the information that is around you in your answers. And that's always a sign of a mind which is working very well. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining in and for staying on for almost 2 hours here. I hope this session was useful. And I hope to meet some of you in the Kraftshala programs, others on campus as well. But I wish you, nevertheless, I wish you all the best for your career ahead. And I'm sure that as long as you stay the path, stay calm, keep trying to make yourself better today than you were yesterday, you're going to have a great career, right? So good luck to all of you. I wish you all the best. Thank you and bye-bye.